Hello, and welcome to Permission to Be.
Let's hit him with the remix.
Oh, well, y'all got to change that.
Yes.
What do we do?
We leave our F-bombs in and...
Let's tell some stories.
As long as white people are bound, the people in power are bound, they're going to keep us bound to the same thing that they're bound to.
Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And I think out of the overflow of the spirit, the body does.
Challenge some narratives.
Why is that the best that God could offer you?
Mike made it very clear that he did not want to get any of these questions beforehand. So he is getting this question live, raw, for the very first time.
This is...
And I feel like art is the expression of the heart where words fail.
Oh my goodness, I have tears. Oh, you all are killing it.
Unfiltered.
I feel like that's gotta sound strange.
Permission to be.
Actually, my literary agent, when we were talking about what book might I write, he was like, I mean, A Black Man with Hope is an interesting book.
Oh, shit.
Hey friends, welcome to Permission to Be. Tonight we are elated to have Ray McKinnon join us. Elated. Ray is so many things. I personally learned about Ray and who you are when you ran for office. What was that? Last election?
It was this cycle's primary.
It was this cycle. Okay.
And the last cycle too.
So I'm sorry about that, but 2020 seems like 10 years long.
I whenever I hear you speak and whenever I hear, like, we'll get into this later, y'all, but like, we know Ray's a friend, Ray's local peoples. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, how in the hell twice did the people of Mecklenburg County go, we don't want this brilliant fighter for, anyway, on my
Because y'all know that he had our votes. Every time.
Anyway.
Ray also is a pastor, a community leader, an influencer, an educator. And I'm going to stop there because we could go on with his accolades and we're just going to dive into conversation.
You missed the two most important ones.
He's a husband and a father.
A father.
Yes.
Tommy got it.
I know where this is going. The damn heteros.
Freaking breeders.
Oh, stop yourself.
Hetero patriarchal norms of husbands and wives and All right. If there's any indication of how this conversation is going to go, people, well, buckle up.
And I'm holding a glass of red, and Tommy is holding a glass of red. So this.
And I've already had my margaritas, so let's
just one margarita gets Becca real giggly. Was it one or two? Wait.
Well, so it's Trader Joe's has margarita wine, and so it's two of those. So it's 11%.
Okay. Are we advertising that for basic white girl season?
Oh, you went there.
I mean,
so the reason I wasn't having whiskey is because I was trying not to be tipsy, which I'm trying to drink water to get me there now.
Yeah. So this conversation is brought to you by wine and
Trader Joe's. Yeah. No, not Trader Joe's. They're not our sponsor. We cannot say that. But
anywho, yeah, come on, Trader Joe's. We like you. You're good company model.
Your sponsorship.
Anyway, Ray, we are 4 days from the end of the election.
We have 2 more early vote days and then election day. So we're ticking down, man. We're almost there.
So that just gives everybody a framework for how we're coming to this conversation today.
So if you listen to it after election, just remember this feeling you had before.
With what feeling of like impending doom
Yes,
Like, if I don't do everything, my democracy will not be here. Yes. I don't want to feel this. I want to listen to it after the election. We will know that we have saved democracy from its slip into fascism.
Yes. Oh, please, Jesus.
That's really interesting. Okay. One, I do want to talk about you and your family and your life, but also I would be interested on your perspective and your explanation. Some people might feel that when we talk about a slip into fascism and all this other language, they might feel like it's hyperbole, exaggeration, and probably those people probably aren't listening to Permission to Be, quite frankly. But I love your mind. I love your brain. I love how you word and phrase things. You have a very pastorally way of wording and phrasing things. Could you sort of break down why you say those things and why you put the seriousness of the language that you intentionally choose when you describe the times that we're living in?
Yeah, man. I really am intentional about using terms like fascism because, like, when I talk about us slipping into this, it's kind of like the analogy that's overused about the frog in the boiling pot. Like, it happens gradually over time, and so we've seen that. So, and let me preface with this: I don't believe that these slips toward fascism are only because of Donald Trump, right? I think that we've been getting here since 9/11, but I think especially it was escalated when we elected our first Black president in Donald Trump, and you had Mitch McConnell talking about making him a one-term president. And so that started to erode so many of the norms of our democracy, and it showed just how fragile it really is because it depends so much on like these gentlemen's, air quote, gentlemen's agreements and adherence to norms, that when you get somebody who is like Mitch McConnell, who really couldn't care less about that, all he cared about was restoring power and kind of sticking it to the president, at the time, President Obama, you'll get these slips. And then so you fast forward to today, where, the president he could almost, I believe he could actually come out and talk about never giving up the presidency, and there'll be folks who are like, yeah, that's what we need. That's what because they have made our country synonymous with him as the person, right? Like, and normally you would have Democrats and Republicans saying, no, man, this is not working. But the Republican Party morphed into this
party of Trump.
I don't know what was that party?
Party of Trump.
Party of Trump. But also Mitch McConnell. Donald Trump is, and this might be unpopular, I believe Donald Trump is a symptom of what the Republican Party had already become under Mitch McConnell. Donald Trump would never have been able to do what he has done but for the groundwork being laid by the Mitch McConnells of the Republican Party. The ones who, you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Like,
I
don't know.
It was just ripping off the Band-Aid, like it was there. It was there. Just like racism has always been there. It has never gone away. It was just ripping off the Band-Aid, and just, they're not afraid anymore to show themselves.
And when you think about what is fascism, like it's all, and it always surrounds a figure, a person, right? It has to, Donald Trump they needed that figure. Mitch McConnell wasn't that figure. Like, make no mistakes, it's he and folks like him who have laid the foundation for this. And Donald Trump is almost a Manchurian like candidate, to use. I'm crossing metaphors, but he is. To not just Putin, I believe to the Mitch McConnells of the world, right?
You label the start with sort of Mitch McConnell, and I would even probably label it back the Southern strategy. The GOP or Grand Old Party, Republican Party, intentionally said that we're going to root into this racist rhetoric, this divisive rhetoric, to gain votes. And then, we got Citizens United. Mitch McConnell definitely has his hand within that. And he recognized that, we can throw all this money towards elections. And if we can get to spend unlimited money from corporations, then we can influence elections and suppress it, because we've built, in a system of capitalism where there is money, there is power. Studying the history of how the parties have formed and the platforms that they've adopted and leading up to today, I just think is incredibly fascinating. And this is like, come on, people, politics affect your life so heavily, so directly. So it's like, I don't understand when people are like, I'm not political. What do you mean? What do you mean you're not political?
Because that's what the church has taught, that we're not political. And they've tried to, I think there's this facade of nothing's political. This is what we believe in our religious systems, and this is what is over here in political, and it's two separate things. And I believe that specifically the white church has been a key player in separating it, so followers following blindly and thinking they're not political, and instead they're right in the center of it.
Yeah, I recall this time where early on when I was pastoring at the church where I was, somebody messaged our Facebook page, and they said, your pastor needs to stop being so political and worry about the gospel. And, the thing I'll say to people all the time is that I'm never partisan in my role as a pastor, when I'm pastoring, when I'm preaching, when I'm whatever. I'm not partisan. I'm not the Democratic pastor, right? But I said, I will always be political, always. It is part of the work. I will never be partisan where I'm saying Democrats are bad, Republicans are good from the pulpit, but I will always be political, because politics is that intersection of policies and systems that impact people. If pastors and the church and people of faith aren't involved there, what's the point? Let's just hang it up, right? Like if we're not, if faith doesn't speak into policies and systems that impact people, what even are we doing? I'm just crazy enough to believe that we should take seriously Amos when Amos talks about letting justice roll down. And those aren't suggestions. Those are prophetic words to us from God. And so often you hear people who talk about, politics or being divisive. It's an interesting thing. It reminds me of the people who are so comfortable with the status quo, right? The people who are not likely bearing in their bodies the consequences of all of these, let's just not be divisive. And it's not just white people. It's not. I've seen as many Black Christians have this kind of talk about not being divisive, and what they mean by that is to not make anybody uncomfortable, to never call out anything in particular. And it's this idea where we want for there to be negative peace, right? It's that concept that King talked about, the negative peace versus the positive peace, right? Negative peace helps the oppressor, right? So I don't give a damn about a negative peace where you're just, nobody's uncomfortable, but like positive peace, I want that. But with positive peace, there is that very important element of justice, where there has been a recompense, where we have done our best to make things right. And so, I think sometimes we give Black evangelicals too much of a pass, because I think Black evangelicals are just as destructive when it comes to these sorts of things. If you were to look at the Black men who Donald Trump is really picking up, you'll see a great correlation between them and Black evangelicalism. It is the same thing. It's a different side of the same coin. It is all steeped in this very wrong-headed understand of faith, of God, of the church, and of our purpose. There's this sense that the only thing that matters is, saving souls. And, and that just, this concern with only what happens in the sweet by and by, almost making it like God is not involved. It's almost like they're, they have a transcendental view of God, that God is just kind of pulled away, unconcerned, set everything in motion, and that's it. You know what I mean? Like, but that is
priesthood. Yeah. No, that's exactly. Jesus died. That's the justice. Now let's just make it through, and we'll all go to heaven.
Right.
Yeah. If you get saved.
Yeah, it's all sweet bye-bye. I mean, it's like that. If you've ever seen The Color Purple, when Sophia and Oprah Winfrey's character,
Miss Cicely,
they were in the cornfield. It's Celie. Sophia and Celie. Celie was saying, talking about, because Mr. was beating on her, right? Mr. was beating on her. And she said to her she wasn't worried about it because this life lasts for a little while, but heaven lasts always. And then Oprah Winfrey's character said, yeah, you better hit Mass upside his head and worry about heaven later. She realized that what happened today, what was impacting you today, need to be dealt with and not just put off. So many people worry about the sweet by and by when, no, the problem is right now, Mr. is beating you. He needs to be hit upside his head, and we'll worry about heaven later. That's what happened. Like, with these injustices we see, I'm like, I'm not worried about something in the future. I'm worried about the person who has their boot on our necks right now, and I'm not going to lick the boot. I'm going to get your boot off my neck and tell you to stop putting your boot on other people's necks who I love and I know. So
that was amazing. And we started with politics, got into religion, and I want to circle back around. But from that, one, what we can already feel is your passion for justice, your passion for people. So tell us a little bit about yourself and about your trajectory of what got you into justice, what got you into your current ethic, your current politic, your current belief system and structure, and sort of take us down that trajectory of how Ray McKinnon became the person that we're talking to today.
That's a really good question. I mean, Tommy's voice has you all like soothed right now. You're like, I'm ready to tell you my whole world. I might as well get ready to pay you to have this counseling session.
He is a life coach. You all can go to Tommy Allgood coaching.
Or Team
That's
Allgood,
right.
teamallgood.com.
I'm sorry, that's right. It's teamallgood.com.
Like, you don't plug it like right. I think, yeah, man, I don't know. I grew up in East Greensboro, in Dudley Heights. I went to Bluford, Lincoln, and Dudley, all incredible.
For those who don't know, we were located in Charlotte. Greensboro is about an hour and 10 minutes north of Charlotte.
Yes, my apologies.
No, there's no worries, worries. Like, so just wanting to paint the picture for him.
Yeah, so it's not Charlotte. And I never thought I would move to Charlotte, side note, because I loved Greensboro. Everybody was like Charlotte was the place to be. And I'm like, nah, I love Greensboro. We're fine being the third largest city in this state. But I grew up in East Greensboro, which is, if you're from the Charlotte area, it's more similar to like West Charlotte. My mom and dad have been separated my entire life. They divorced when I was in high school, but I've always had a relationship with my mom and my dad, but they just were never together. I spend mostly like the school year with my mom, and we spend the summers with my dad. Sometimes we be with dad during the year. My mom is bipolar, so sometimes she was in the hospital, and so we had to be with dad. I think all of that stuff helped contribute to who I am. I was like the only person in my immediate family who was like a Christian. I used to be like a holy roller, every stereotype you can think of a 90s Christian. I came of age in the 90s, and so that was a really big in that time was, Joshua Harris's I Kissed Dating Goodbye. Like purity. Yeah, man, that was me. No, I didn't listen to secular music, burnt secular music in a barrel. I mean, all the stereotypes was me.
I smashed my Spin Doctor CDs on the steps because I was like, that's not saying good things.
It is not honoring. It is not edifying. So, I mean, I'm the youngest. My twin brother and I my mom and dad have 5 kids together, and we were the youngest. And I was the only one in my family who was like really holy roller type Southern missionary Baptist kid, not Southern Baptist, missionary Baptist. And so, yeah, not Southern Baptist, never been. I don't understand it, but I don't know, man. Like I grew up in church. I was a very conservative Black Christian man. I mean, all the stuff I remember in high school. Well, it was the summer between my 8th and 9th grade year. We went to Youth for Christ used to have this big old gathering, and it was called DCLA 97 is when this happened. And they had it every 3 years. So DCLA 97, 2000, whatever. And so, like, I bought this. I spent my last bit of money to buy this kit to teach me how to start a Christian club on campus. And we started the Panthers for Christ. We were Dudley Panthers. And so we were Panthers for Christ. And, man, I was going to get the whole school saved. And like, part of who I am today is shaped by all of those experiences, like the 90s group. I had this one experience that still haunts me to this day. We had our little club, we had our little meeting, which was basically this, like, I don't know what it was, like Bible study. It was trash. I mean, we didn't think it was trash. Looking back on it, it was just straight up trash. Like, I think we hurt people, but there was this one guy who was like a very stereotypical black gay dude. And he was part of the group. I don't know that he ever said, like, hey, y'all, I'm gay, which I doubt in the 90s he would have.
Yeah.
But I remember we were in the club one time, the Panthers for Christ, not the club.
You weren't. You see me, bro. You ain't kind of catch you riding dirty.
Doing the Roger Rabbit. But I remember I was being led by the Spirit, air quotes, and I remember, I was praying for this guy, and I said, God told me to tell you that you shouldn't be gay or something like that. I don't remember what. I mean, it was something that was trash.
Ray.
I was with it, bro. And this is always what I think about. I remember the guy's name. His first name was Edward. And every time I look back on my experience in high school and that whole part, I think about that. Because I wouldn't have considered myself to be like this, like, evangelical guy who was homophobic or whatever. But I think I was. I mean, I went to a conservative Bible college. I don't think I was. I know I was. But ironically, what started me on this path toward justice, beyond going to my church I went to growing up, St. Paul Missionary Baptist, our theme was welcome to St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church, 3309 East Larkin Street, where everybody is somebody. And that was our motto. So, and our pastor was kind of a social justice. It's kind of what you think of when you think of black churches, like, it was a big deal. But then I went to, like, more white churches in 10th grade, and that kind of started me on this evangelical path. But at this conservative Bible college, I had a professor who is conservative as hell. He still is. Now I'm like, how were you such a big influence in my life and you're so conservative now? Like, you see these people you lionize on Facebook. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I remember lionizing this professor. But he was the first one I remember saying we can have any belief that we want to have as long as we can back it up with scripture. That's what he said to me. I think we can have any belief we want to have, full stop now. And I started to see, like, the stuff that the church say they care about, like pro-life issues. I wasn't really seeing it. And so I don't know. I've said a lot. I don't think I've answered your question. So it's just been a culmination of, like, life experiences and just getting to the point where I'm comfortable thinking independently, comfortable not having to fit a mold that was crafted a while ago for who I'm supposed to be. So I don't know.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. There's so much there. And so I guess take us also from meeting your wife, because again, you labeled these as the two most important things. So we have to talk about these two things. So take us from meeting your wife and then also, like, your children and sort of your family structure within that. So the first question, what did conservative mean? And then how did your family life, as you built a family life, influence all of that?
Okay. Yeah, man, that's good. Like any good Christians, Kelly that I met at church, her church, she was doing a liturgical dance.
That won you over.
She was like dancing. I used to joke and say we met at the club or at the bar or something like that. But that's not how we met.
Making love in the club, hey, in this club, hey.
Yeah. But yeah, so we met at church, and for me at the time, conservative was like a very complementarian understanding of like the relational role. So when I say complementarian, it's like, God made each of us to complement one another, but that's where you get the whole, honor your husband type stuff. I don't know that if I ever really practiced that. That was always my understanding of what it looked like, as opposed to how we actually have always operated is egalitarian, where we're equal in every way, not just in sacred worth, which is what complementarians will say, that we're equal in sacred worth before God, but we have different roles and all this stuff. Kelly and I have never really operated like that. It's always kind of been where we are, but we did have very much traditional mindsets when it comes to the role, like our roles as husband and wife. And I think over these like 16 years we've been together, I've learned to just embrace that I'm not that guy. Like, I'm not the guy who's like I am, like, literally in our family, if our kids want a hug or, some type of compassion, they're coming to me. If they want something fixed, they're going to their mom. And I'm like, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm not like, I don't know if it's because I've gotten older. I'm like, yeah, I've really like, yo, bro, I don't feel any kind of way about that. I cry. I don't mind saying it. Like, I'm very emotive. I feel so much. Like, I feel with people. And I think being with Kelly and I have had to both embrace it. And on the other side, she's had to embrace, like, she's just not that like super cuddly, like you want your kid cuddling up with you type of mom. Like, she's just not who she is. It's like not her speed. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. Like, yeah, and I'm fine with it. Like, I'm like, yeah, my 12-year-old he still will cuddle up with me. I'm like, yes, all the cuddles. Kelly's like, it's God, get off of me. I'm like, it won't be like this for long. All the feels, like, you're not gonna be like this forever. Everything, and I'm the guy who's quoting Beautiful Boy lyrics to my now 20-year-old son. Like, I'm always like, everything. I love you more than everything. It's like, oh my God, bro, I get it. So I don't know. I mean, and our boys, we have 4 boys. Our oldest is 30. We have a 20-year-old. We have a 16-year-old. We have a 12-year-old. All 4 of our boys are adopted from foster care, which is really cool. So, and we're also we have this weird blend of being like this, like, transracial family, because like 3 of our boys are biracial. Both Kelly and I are Black, but our boys, they are biracial. So their biological mom is white, biological dad is Black, and so you are figuring out all of this stuff through a lens of, all the stuff that happened this summer. So I don't want my kids to think that, one of my youngest son, like, could totally pass as white, but I don't want him thinking he out in these streets white, because, if he gets dark enough, you can tell. And so I'm just like, it's figuring out all this stuff. I feel like this conversation's meandering.
No, it's not. This is what Permission to Be does.
We meander. So, okay, within that, I've heard a lot within that. So I've heard that you start to talk about you bumped up against challenging traditional roles of masculinity. Within that, I've heard you talk about wrestling with an affirming ethic. Within that, I've heard you begin to break down these misogynistic tendencies that we build into relationships, and even misogynoir, especially misogyny directed towards Black women. What was sort of the catalyst for you to begin tackling these big ideas and systems to transform who you are today? Because when I say that, when I look at Ray today, Ray is a person who values anti-racism policies and practices. He is a person that strives for equality, not just equality, but equity and inclusion as it relates to women. Just hearing his story about his personal story of becoming an affirming individual. And so I know that sometimes these things happen sort of like a switch, and then also within that, you even mentioned mental health, right? And so I can't help but see you in that. in the context of a Black man in America. Right. How is it navigating all of that?
Yeah, man. You know, there was a time where I thought I was a unique, like, unicorn, right? I thought I was this, and I think that's the way a lot of stuff works. If we can be convinced that we're so unique, it has a way of isolating and also kind of not pushing us to grow. But I've realized, like, you know, living in Charlotte, I'm not that unique. Like, I've got plenty of Black male friends who feel the same way, like, who are processing this. And I think sometimes there was times where, because I have a lot of friends who are not Black too, and I could, you know, like the college I went to, for instance, was the exact opposite from my high school. My high school was like 98% Black. This, you know, the college I went to was probably 99% white, and then 1% Black of every BIPOC, right? You know, sometimes you when you get outside of your bubble, like, because I can live in a bubble. Like, most of my friends, whatever their race is, we would probably share a similar ethos. We might not kind of go at things the same way, but, you know, folks who are my friends, like, I'm close with, not like acquaintances, but we're not doing the thing where we have to convince people about the dignity and worth of all people. Like, that's just not happening. But sometimes when I get outside that bubble, like even in the world of Facebook, like connecting with some of the friends I went to high school with, and kind of still seeing this kind of way of thinking that, from my perspective, is less than honoring and less than the highest and best, or even approaching the highest and best. You see that, okay, maybe we still have a good ways to go to help us, especially Black men, to see that, you know, who a person loves is who a person loves. And it isn't just, I mean, it isn't a choice, right? I think that was the first step for me, is crossing that hurdle when it comes to sexuality, that folks don't choose. And, you know, and it was like most things, it was a personal relationship for me. One of my closest friends came out, one of the people who I was closest to, frankly, it's the person who I thought I was going to marry, and that's a whole story. And I remember when she came out, she told me, this is a person who loves God, all this stuff, rah, rah, rah. We kind of started Panthers for Christ together. I remember when she came out, was she just like, I'm embracing this? Because she used to say she struggled with it, air quote. When she was like, I'm embracing this, I remember she said, I have a clear conscience about this. And I said to her, this person's name, Tanetta, I said, Tanetta, you either have a clear conscience or it has been seared by the devil. I said that to her in probably like 2005 or 6, right? So my transformation has not been this like decades long place, right? Like, Tanetta didn't like hang up the phone. She should have, right? And say, you know, F that guy, I ain't fucking messing with him no more. Like, she didn't do any of that. She challenged me. She forced me to read and not just accept things. She forced me to research. And I remember she gave me this one book, and I started reading it, and it started making me curious. I'm like, wait, I'm basing this understanding on 6 or 7 verses of scripture, many of which are not true to the real context. Am I really doing that? Wait, if I got this so wrong, what else did I get wrong? What else didn't I understand? What else did I not see a more full understanding of reading of? And so kind of for me, what started pulling this thread was Tanetta challenging my bigotry, right? That I don't know that I would have been able to name as bigotry, and then giving me the tools to come to arrive at places on my own. So she didn't force the issue. I wasn't like, you know, she didn't take abuse, right? I wasn't like saying you need to change. I remember she came to, we were living in Orange County at the time, and she came and she invited us to go with her to, back then there was this network called the Gay Christian Network. And they had a chapter, I think, in Orange County somewhere, in Chapel Hill. And she invited us to go with them to a Bible study. And I remember that it was absolutely nothing like I thought it was. It was as boring as just like you would ever think of Bible study. But there were, like, the only difference is the people who were leading the Bible study, attending for the most part, were gay people. And I was like, I know it sounds so ridiculous now saying it. Like, I don't know what I thought. Like, the first time I went to cried, it wasn't like I was like, oh, you mean there's not debauchery and scattered ass everywhere? You know?
Exactly.
It depends on where you're looking.
Tommy's like, I can tell you. Well, when I went.
I mean, I love Jesus and.
I love Jesus and. Come on. There's a sermon in there, brother. I love Jesus and.
Amen.
So I don't know. I mean, it was just experiencing. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's what it was. It was having experiences beyond the ones I've had. It was expanding my world, my understanding of the world, what I'd always known. I mean, like, that's what kind of started it. And once once your eyes have been awakened, you can no longer unsee what you're seeing, right? And there's an understanding now for me that, when I hear the text that talks about how we all see through a glass dimly, like, there's an understanding that I don't have all of the answers. I won't. And there's no need for me to pretend that I do, because I'm not being judged on that, right? Like my understanding of God has been so beautifully challenged, and who God was, I think, when in my evangelical days, like now I understand God as God is a God of grace and justice, and these things matter.
I want to hop back to, you said that you realize that you're not a unicorn and that you realize that there are many others like you. And so I just, as a white person projecting my view of men, like everything you described to me is a unicorn still. And so my perception, of course, of a Black man is going to be my projection of what I see in white men. So I'm curious, why is it not a unicorn to you? I'm thankful that I have a husband who's very similar in characteristics that you described. But to me, that's a unicorn.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't see it as a unicorn. I'm not saying that by and large, the majority of men are where Tommy and I are, or where your husband and I are. But I'm saying in my orbit, right, with of the people with whom I share the most space, my understandings are not, they're normal. This is the thing that would be abnormal would be the other view that I once held, right? So I'm saying in the space where I spend the most of my time are folks who are men, even, whether they're heterosexual or homosexual or anything in between that, or other than that, like there is this understanding that I think is similar. I do think, by and large, we still wrestle as a society with, obviously, misogyny, with bigotry, with homophobia. I mean, there's still men who the worst thing you can say to them is that they're gay or whatever. I don't know. I don't know if it's being getting older, being a dad, or what. Like, one of my kids was telling a story about how somebody said they were gay or whatever, and then their response I thought was beautiful, and I hope it was like, yeah, okay, well, you say that like there's something wrong with being gay. There's nothing wrong with being gay. Like that's the response I hope people see. Like, all right, like that's not an insult. Like it's just like you saying, oh, you're a guy. It's like, all right, it's not. This is something that's immutable. Like nobody can change it. So it's dumb to do. I'd love for us to be there. I don't know that we are there. So I guess when I talk about, I don't feel like a unicorn is because the folks with whom I share the most space, it isn't abnormal, right? Like my closest friend.
Yeah.
For the most part.
I will add to that. I think, because I think I've heard Cedric allude to something similar.
Cedric Lundy.
Yeah, Cedric Lundy. We talk about, I think as Black men, we can talk a lot about finding our place in society. And if we're not, gang banging or, on the streets or using certain vernacular, it's hard to see where we fit in, and so I don't want to divorce that though from the systems of white supremacy that then compound upon people to say, like, this is how you have to act. You don't have permission to be who you are. You don't have, right? And so is it that, Ray and Cedric are actually unicorns, or myself, are we actually unicorns, or is this simply the product of what it means, like what happens when you begin to break down the structures of white supremacy and patriarchy that are guiding and guarding your life? So, and I think that we begin to have less people that appear as unicorns, and we begin to step outside of those triggers and traumas where we look at all men or all white people as the enemy or as the trigger, as we begin to enmesh ourselves with people who are doing the work. And I think that's why it's important to have a strong community that is invested in doing the work of anti-racism, that is invested in being anti-sexist, that is invested in this inclusion, in this equality, so that it's not a question of, oh, how do you survive being the unicorn? But like, what is it that you are divesting from, and how are you divesting from that, and how are you finding your power in that?
I think too that it's important for us to recognize that we really are not that unique. I think our perceptions of Black men are colored more than even for us Black men by what people project as is the case. The majority of I can think of, like, not just my circle of friends, but my family, right? Like, I'm not the unicorn when it comes to being like a person who feels like I'm not like the guy, like, I'm not the only guy in my family who cries. Like, I'm not the only who hug. Like, that's how we are. Like, that's
say that.
The thing, like, I'm not the only guy in my family who's a boss ass dad, who's a great dad. Like, that's the norm. And so I do believe that we have this perception about what it means to be a Black man. Now, what we have to do is refuse to sit into those stereotypes. I've just not fit stereotypes in general. But a lot of times it's stuff that it hasn't been necessarily what was expected on me from other Black men. It was what I thought other Black men expected from me, or what Black women expected from me. But, the older I've gotten, the thing I know is that this is me. Like, I am me authentically, just like this. I use the same jokes. I have the same inability to dance no matter what space I'm in. Like, it hadn't always been the case. There was a time where I felt like I had to be one person in this setting and another person in this setting. But the thing I've learned is that when I am myself, my dad has the best saying. My dad always says to be like that. You are the expert on you. Nobody else can be you. You can be you, who you are. So, like, if I like country music, I like country music, and it makes me no less Black. If I like whatever the stuff that I like, the music I like, but it doesn't change that I'm a Black man. That is immutable. I am, as I have always been, a Black man, and it's okay to not look like how somebody has prescribed for you to look, because if people can do anything, they can spot inauthenticity, they can spot an imposter, a person. Until we learn to be comfortable in our own skin, presenting ourselves, showing up as we are, we will never find out who we are, and we'll never connect with people, right? The thing that, I was saying on this other podcast this week is, with my friends, like, no matter who they are, like, you're going to just have to get comfortable with, hearing me say, I love you, or hearing me say, this concerns me, or hearing me, my anxiety around, you driving up to DC in the middle of the night because I'm scared something's going to happen. And I'm going to let you know. And that's been the beautiful thing, like, with my friends, whether they're men or what, but, it's seeing that, because sometimes the first time, you hear your boys say, hey, man, I love you. Hey, man, I was thinking about you. Hey, man, dang, I should miss you, man. I miss your face. It can be jarring, like, okay, it's weird. If we don't act like it's weird, it is what it is. Like, yo, I love you. Like, I think about my buddy Chaz, who's one of my best friends call him my BBF. And, you know, this dude we're so different. I mean, he is stoic, hardly lets anybody in. And I'm like, yo, man, I love you. What's up? He's just like, I love you too, BBF. So the first time it was just kind of like, what the heck is going on? This guy, what's up with this guy? This guy hitting on me? You know, it's like, but, you know, you just kind of, I don't know, man. Like, you just be who you are. And then you give, because it really does give people then permission to be who they are. Like, that's the thing that this authenticity does. It gives people permission to come alive and to be who they are. And that is, after all, what the world needs, is for people who have come alive.
That was so good, man. So good. So good.
I'll sip my wine now.
Good Lord. Thank you so much for listening to part 1 of our conversation with Ray McKinnon. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. And make sure you follow us on social media so that you stay up to date with what we're doing. And it is my deepest hope, my most sincere hope, that you are finding the authenticity and the permission to be fully and truly who you are becoming. Being is becoming. And we are glad to be on this journey with you. We'll see you soon.